This video is sponsored by Prime Matter. Hey everybody, it's Party Elite, and today we're back with another look at Crossfire Legion, the upcoming sci-fi RTS that harkens back to the classics that many, myself included, have been longing for. I released a video a little while ago covering some of the core features of Crossfire Legion, and you can find a link in the description down below and under the eye at the top right corner of this screen if you'd like to check it out. I'll try not to repeat myself too much today, and you'll be seeing all new footage as well as all new game mechanics and a first peek at the campaign gameplay too. The game is now out in early access, and for more information or to check it out for yourself, don't hesitate to use the link in the description and pinned comment down below. And as always, feel free to use the timestamps down below to move around to what piques your curiosity most. With all that said, let's not waste any more time, let's dive on in. What is Crossfire? Well, it's important to know first that Crossfire is an IP that goes well beyond this RTS we're looking at today. The IP is as old as the mid-2000s, originating from a free-to-play online tactical first-person shooter. In 2020, it was still one of the most played video games worldwide, with 6 million concurrent users and a billion registered players. The level of success has spawned spin-off movies, TV shows, and games alike, and that's exactly what Crossfire Legion is. An RTS spin-off from one of the most played first-person shooters, handed off to experienced devs over at Blackbird Interactive, the same folks behind the upcoming Homeworld 3 and the very same who made Homeworld Deserts of Karak 2, with people at the studio who've been making strategy games since before the studio even existed. What I'm getting at is that these are experienced strategy devs, and you might recognize the publishers too, Prime Matter. These guys were behind Iron Harvest, Wasteland 3, and Mount and Blade 2, Bannerlord. I say all this to give you an idea of the level of support and experience that's behind the game. And apart from that, the setting itself is a fairly simple three-way war. You've got 3 factions which all work tremendously differently, and just to touch on them with a bit of detail, you've got Global Risk, which is a counter-terrorist private military corporation that works beyond the limits of political bodies. You've got the Blacklist, which is a mercenary company fighting on behalf of the underprivileged nations trying to make a mark for themselves. And then there's the New Horizon, a new addition to the universe that seems intent on elevating humanity past its corporeal form and limitations. Again, each of the 3 have their own playstyles, as you can imagine, from the fast production rates and high unit counts of Global Risk to the guerrilla tactics and unconventional approach of the Blacklist to the high-tech quality over quantity approach of a well-microed New Horizon army. With 48 units available to unlock across the 3 factions, you'll be taking on challenges to unlock units that further fine-tune the faction to your needs and style on a per-game basis, keeping your opponent on their toes as they might not know exactly what tools you'll be bringing, even if they know which faction you're playing as. With multiple commanders available for unlock as well, you'll have a slew of special abilities at your fingertips too, depending on your choices on that front. Some commanders will allow you to create damage over time in an area of effect. Others will make it easier to utilize hit-and-run tactics, and each will add another layer of variety to your approach and to how your opponent will have to adapt. Now, I know what you're all thinking when you see this, but from what I've seen with my time with the game so far, the only way to acquire these new units is through accomplishing various challenges or, of course, simply playing the game. Even playing against the AI works. There's a little something for every style of player here, and you can pit all of these units against each other in multiplayer in a traditional skirmish mode against humans or AI, or you can work together with friends in the co-op mode, or you can experience the narrative single-player campaign. So why don't we touch a little more on all of that, shall we? Co-op and versus multiplayer. Apart from the officially organized tournaments like the one running in early June of 2022, you can expect quite a few ways to play Crossfire Legion, either with or against other players or AI bots. There's matchmaking available for quick 3v3 games, but you can also host or join lobbies to set up a few different game modes with a variety of player counts and maps at your disposal. In this early access stage, there are 3 game modes. The classic PvP mode features 4 map options where you have to collect resources, build and expand your base, recruit units, and destroy all enemy bases to win. The largest maps can fit up to 6 players comfortably, though you don't need all spots filled to play on them, and the smaller maps are built around 1v1s and 2v2s if that's more your speed. These maps will have you competing for hotspots that give various buffs from health regeneration to stealth to extra vision, and you'll be using a variety of strategies depending on who and what you're up against and where. Some maps will give unexpected airborne assaults the spotlight, while some will give high ground advantage to main bases, allowing defenses to be built around the inherent advantage. Sometimes you'll want to seek out far-off expansions over your natural to capture some of the aforementioned buffs, introducing new hot zones on the map that can completely change the flow of the game. And it's not like every map features a bit of everything either. Each map is its own battlefield, each with its own tricks and approaches that work best for each faction, depending on which units you've decided to take to the field and which commanders are supplying which special abilities. Again, to clarify, in this and other multiplayer game modes, when you select a faction, you're not just choosing which faction you're going in as, but you're also choosing between your unlocked units for that faction to fine-tune and customize your approach based on, again, who you're up against, what your strategy might be, which map you're on, and what your overall approach is going to be for that game moving forward. And you can switch this unit build up for every match you play, even if you're using the same faction, keeping you fresh and keeping your opponents on their toes as well. Separate from this standard skirmish mode is Payload, a very interesting versus game mode with 3 completely different maps from the standard game mode available at the moment in early access, and a completely different set of objectives to go with them. Again, though these maps are built for 6 and 4 player matches, you can play them with fewer, and though it's less frantic with fewer players, it's no less fun. Payload is a great time. With the traditional base building mostly intact, you do start with a much higher pop cap. In theory, that means you can start fielding large armies right off the bat, and since the expansions are right next to your main base as opposed to forcing you to travel quite far for your expansions, you're able to acquire resources a lot more quickly and a lot more securely too. This also makes winning through base destruction a little harder to accomplish. It is an option, but a well-defended base is going to be very hard to overcome, so you'll typically instead try to secure the payloads, which arrive every once in a while, and which the mode is actually named after, acquiring secondary payloads to get special abilities to get an edge from time to time, and acquiring and escorting the primary nuclear payload to 3 distinct locations marked on the map to win once you hit all 3 locations. These nuclear payloads have a preset point of arrival and destination. They move very slowly, and they can get ambushed and destroyed even after you've claimed them, though not after they've been delivered. So, you spend time building up your forces, harassing each other, and hopefully having enough strength left to claim and escort the nuclear payload to its destination before it gets intercepted by your opponent. You have to do that 3 times, because whoever gets that done 3 times before the other wins the match. This creates an interesting push and pull, and the added objectives certainly changes things up. The secondary payloads that provide special abilities to use are no small matter either. From extra defensive capabilities to temporary stealth for units to tactical nukes, they can tip the balance when used appropriately. Finally, the co-op mode pits you and another player against an AI bot, presenting you with a fresh map with its own objectives. Between the 3 multiplayer game modes, there's quite a bit of fun to be had experimenting with the 3 factions and their various toys. The maps are all interesting both visually and tactically, and Payload adds a fresh twist to the usual approach, giving you an alternative way to go head-to-head with others or practice against the AI. Beyond multiplayer, though, is the narrative campaign. The single-player narrative campaign in Crossfire Legion takes place across 15 missions of short to medium length, giving you a chance to learn the ins and outs of the gameplay mechanics and the factions before you dive into multiplayer. The current early access state only gives access to a handful of missions, but they give a clear indication of what you can expect as more missions get added. Each successful mission helps accumulate points with which to unlock units for use in multiplayer too, and that's not the only incentive to play the narrative campaign. The story is told through cutscenes with full voiceovers and interesting action-oriented scenarios that differ from regular gameplay. Narrative campaigns for games like these often boil down to doing the same things you do in multiplayer or skirmish games, only with added restrictions or scripted reinforcements. Crossfire Legion takes it a step further, and though it's not the first game to ever do this, it certainly takes its own approach in many ways. Right off the bat, the first mission has you traversing rooftops with a small Spec Ops team, while the second mission has you protecting and escorting civilians under threat as you provide backup to stranded troops to bolster your numbers in the active mission, and a later mission still has you using abilities in ways you might not in a traditional multiplayer game, trying to infiltrate behind enemy lines, hacking turrets and generators, and all sorts of fun stuff. Even when you start base building and playing a more traditional format of game in the single-player narrative campaign, your objectives stay interesting, alongside fun set pieces to keep you on your toes. The in-engine cutscenes, the voice acting, and the overall tone is always fast-paced, and you'll get punished right from the start if you take an overly relaxed approach to the campaign. For example, the campaign throws you in the thick of things, expecting you to respond to escalating and evolving situations, but using set pieces to control that escalation and make sure you have enough time to adapt and respond before it's too late. I'm curious to see how the other two campaigns play out and how the story itself plays out as well. I won't spoil anything, but the ending of Act 1 in this early access phase definitely piqued my curiosity in a few ways, and I'm excited to see where things go next. Between its three varied factions, the multitude of units between them, and the different game modes available in single and multiplayer, Crossfire Legion is trying a few new things, and if you're interested in checking it out or learning more, you can use the link in the description and pinned comment down below. The game is currently out in early access, and the developers intend to take user feedback into consideration as they move forward, and I have to say, between this build and the prior one I played a handful of months ago, there's already a massive leap forward. I'll definitely be keeping an eye on Crossfire Legion as it progresses through early access, and I'd love to know what you guys think based on what you've seen here, or what you've played if you decided to pick it up. Don't hesitate to subscribe to the channel for more strategy gaming content, and you can check out additional details about Crossfire Legion, including more in-depth details about the three factions and their playstyles, at the video I've linked on screen here. As always, a massive thanks goes out to all of the channel members and patrons who've been supporting the channel on a monthly basis. Y'all keep us alive and running smoothly. And of course, a big ol' thanks goes out to each and every one of you for watching. Until next time, cheers.